One of the things libertarians and right-wingers love to go on about is rights. We're losing our rights here. We're losing our rights there. And sometimes it seems very strange, like they're saying they're losing rights when the government does something to ensure more rights. So it seems kind of strange when they do that. Because the thing is, they're obscuring what it is human rights are. Now let me give you this example from the rebel media. And by rebel, I mean it's run by a guy, Ezra Levant, who was a spokesman for tobacco companies and oil companies, because nothing says rebel like essentially being the tool of the biggest capitalist interest in the country. However, this particular video will be responding to one done by Brian Liley over trans rights issues and his statements concerning rights.
See that building behind me? That's Parliament, the House of Commons, the Senate. They're in there. MPs and senators dwell there, and these are the people that are supposed to protect our rights. Unfortunately, once again, they're mucking about with our rights instead. There's a bill that's already gone through the Commons. It's now before the Senate. And the Senate's passed some amendments, and that has people outraged because it's an attack on rights. I actually think the bill itself is an attack on rights. Here's what the bill is about. I'm going to read to you from the text. This enactment amends the Canadian Human Rights Act to include gender identity as a prohibited grounds of discrimination. I'm opposed to that. Why? Because I don't think that we need to parcel out each and every group. I'm of the crazy idea that we're all created equal, and as individuals we should not be discriminated against. We don't need to have a special designation. So on top of gender identity, we already have the following that are protected. Women, Aboriginals, visible minorities. Don't forget you can't discriminate based on age. You can't discriminate based on marital status, family condition, criminal conviction even. And now we're going to add gender identity. We used to have a joke in this country that we'd get to the point where only single white men wouldn't have special protection under the law. We're kind of at that point.
Only a libertarian or a conservative could think that giving equal rights to one group of people is automatically somehow taking rights away from another group of people. But how? Well, libertarians and conservatives don't really see human rights. They don't see people. They see property rights, what right you have to do with property that you own, the you can't tell me what to do with my property kind of thing. The problem is, human rights inherently conflict with property rights. Now take, for example, you have a ton of food in a warehouse and there's a ton of people starving. Could you give those people the food? No, because I have to make money. I own this. You can't tell me to give it to starving people. These are my property rights under the law. It's illegal to confiscate food to feed the poor, but it's not illegal to let people starve to death. Now this is a very prime example. Now normally this is done on a larger scale, first and third world kind of thing. But this is a perfect example of how human rights inherently conflict with property rights.
And I think that this is the wrong way to go. I think that we need to look at rights as being natural. We are endowed with them by our Creator. If you don't believe in a Creator, that's fine. They are natural rights. They exist beyond government. Our rights don't come from the Charter. They don't come from the Canadian Human Rights Act. They don't come from Parliament or even the Supreme Court building I'm standing next to. They are inherent within us. And we have them because we are each individuals. And that's how we should be treated, as individuals, and not based on, we shouldn't be treated based on what ethnic group we belong to, or what race, or what gender identity group.
Here's where the problem begins. Rights don't exist in nature because rights aren't a naturally existing thing. They are a social construct created by people. They don't come from an objective source, which is why there's such debate over what should be rights and what should not be. But you see exactly what he's done here. He says inalienable rights that come from the Creator, because that's the easiest way to claim an objective view of rights, to claim they come from God. But that kind of stands against reason, because it actually is the opposite of what reason is. And then when that doesn't work, because some of the audience may be atheist, he then turns around and claims that they're natural. But they're not natural, and that's the point. This philosophy that rights are somehow natural in their definition of what rights are is an attempt to paint them in an objective manner so that you cannot challenge them, or that you have no right to challenge them because they are somehow objective in their eyes, whether that be from God or somehow from nature. Now, we Marxists, on the other hand, have a much better system. We define what is exploitation. Exploitation is bad. Why? Because it causes this, this, and this alienation, and what else will have you. How do you define exploitation? There. Then, how does exploitation cause that? And how does alienation cause that? And then you give an explanation. This is actually quite different from the utopian view, the ultra-liberal idealist view that libertarians and conservatives actually have, where they claim that rights are somehow natural and objective.
I'm actually echoing a guy that used to be a hero to the left, the Reverend Martin Luther King, who on his speech in Washington in 1963 said this:
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Of course, here what Liley's actually forgetting is that we have these laws for a reason. If these groups weren't being marginalized, we wouldn't need these laws to begin with. Like, this stands from the premise that somehow the government just creates these laws for no reason. You see, the fact that we don't treat each other equal is the reason why we need these laws. Because if we did treat each other equal, then the laws wouldn't have to be there. But that's the part he's leaving out.
I think everyone needs to take a breath, step back, and start dismantling this portioning off of rights based on our group identity. We need to get back to the idea that we have rights because of our individuality, because we are human beings, rather than we have rights because we belong to a specific group or the right group that's in vogue at the moment. But maybe I'm just the crazy one.
I also believe that what you're leaving out is a certain definition of what rights are, that being property rights. Libertarians, conservatives, are not concerned with the conception of human rights. They are concerned with property rights. To them, the ownership of property and the rights therein are human rights. But as we've previously seen, property rights inherently contradict human rights, which is why we as Marxists prefer human rights, not property rights. And this is a prime example of how right-wing ideology inherently obscures the argument around what are rights in order to defend the interests of the capitalist class, or more appropriately, the property-owning class. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them, then head over to my Patreon page and show your support. Or you can go to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share on various social media.